Data preparation is a must-have skill if you want to be a data analyst, as it's reported that you can spend up to 80% of your time as a data analyst working on data preparation tasks. Data preparation is the process of transforming raw data into a format that can be easily analyzed. So basically taking input data and changing it into a format that's easier to work with. This can be done using SQL, Python, Tableau Prep, and even Excel. And in this video, we'll be using a great tool called Alteryx. Alteryx makes data preparation very accessible via its drag and drop interface. And the best part is that you're able to download the tool for free. If you're a college student, you can get a 1-year license for free. And if you're not a college student, you can get up to a 6-month license for free. If you want more details, check out the video's link in the description. So for this practice video, we'll be using a website called Preppin Data. This is a weekly community challenge where you're given a data set and are tasked with formatting it in a specific way. A new challenge is posted every Wednesday and the solution is usually posted by the next Tuesday. So let's get into it. All right, so we are doing the 2023 week 5 challenge called DSP ranking, which is an intermediate challenge. I'll leave a link down to the description so you can see all the details, but basically we're tasked with using data from a fake bank to do a couple of transformations and calculations. Let's go through them real quick. So this is the data file that we have. It's fake data from a bank. It's got a transaction code. It's got a value, a customer code, an indicator if the transaction was done online or in person, and when the transaction happened via the transaction date. One thing to point out here is the transaction code. These 3 digits, these 2 digits, everything before this dash here signifies which bank it came from. So this DTB bank, this is DS bank, and this is DSB bank. Anyway, so the requirements are down here. First thing they want us to do is input the data into the tool of choice. So we're going to be using Alteryx, but you can use SQL, you can use Tableau Prep, you can do Power Query in Excel or PowerBI, anything you want. But we'll be using Alteryx in this video. So that's the first requirement. Then they want us to create a bank code by splitting off the letters from a transaction code and call this field blank. So what I was saying earlier, they want us to take off everything after this dash and keep this as the bank name. Then they want us to change the transaction date to just be the month of the transaction. So if we look here at the transaction date, this would be March, this would be November, and this would be July. Then they want us to total up the transaction value so you have one row for each bank and month combination. So then they want us to do a group by. Basically, they want us to sum up all these values. And so instead of just telling me what this transaction level data was at March, they want to see all the DTB transactions for March. And then after we do that, they want us to rank each bank for their value of transactions each month against the other banks. So whichever bank has the highest for, say, March would be number 1, then the second lowest would be number 2, and so on. And that would be for every single month. Then they want us to calculate the average rank a bank has across all the months. And they want us to call that field the average rank per bank. So basically looking at those rankings and seeing what their average rank is from all the data. And then they also want us to calculate the average transaction value per rank. And they wanted to call this average transaction value per rank. Now this one didn't make too much sense to me, and we'll get into it once we get to that step. But basically is what the average value is for the bank that got number 1, for the bank that got number 2, and number 3. This is what they want the data to look at, like at the end, 6 fields and 36 rows. And if you want a better look, here's how our data looks in the beginning. And here's what they want us to have at the end. Anyways, that's enough talking. Let's get into doing this. So the first thing they want us to do is to input the data. And I already have it downloaded, so all I'm going to do is drag and drop. All right, so let's go through the list of requirements. The first thing they want to do is to create the bank code by splitting off the letters from the transaction code. So to do that, we're going to grab the text to columns tool. And we're going to tell it, So here you have to select which column you want to split. And it already has transaction code as the one we want to split. And we have to select how many columns we want to split off into. And I just want 1, but the minimum is 2. So we'll do 2. Our delimiter is going to be a dash. And basically the delimiter is going to look for whatever value you want to split off by. So in this case, you can see here, it says DTB-716-679-576. So basically what we've done with our settings here is going to split off DTB in one column, or DTB, DS, DSP. And then all the other numbers will be in a different column. But let's go back to Alteryx. And let's see. Yeah, I think that's what we need. Let's hit run to see what happens. And something I like about Alteryx is you can always click this end arrow and see how the data looks at the end of that step. So in the first step was just the input step, and the data just looks like how it was downloaded. Then let's see what happens here at the end of this step. Cool, so here's our original data, all of these columns, and they made a column called 1, another one called 2. And that's because I didn't put an output root name here. Let me call this bank, and then I think it should do bank 1 and bank 2. Yeah, right, so now we have bank 1 and bank 2. Cool, so it's not quite done, but we do have a column named bank 1. At a later step, we're going to get rid of bank 2 and rename this to just bank. So that's the first requirement, finish. Then they want us to change the transaction date to just be the month of the transaction. To do that, we need to do 2 steps. One is to convert the transaction date to an actual date field. Right now, it's just text. Let me delete this so I can show you how to do that. We can see that real quick by using a select tool here. If we run a select tool, it's going to show us all the attributes. And if you can see here, transaction date is a string. It's not a date time. So let's delete the select field and let's change that field to be a datetime field. So here it says select the format to convert, either from datetime to string or from string to datetime. And it's defaulted to string to datetime. I think that's the most common one. And that's what we're going to do. So it says, which field do you want to convert? And it's transaction date. And what do you want this to be called? You know what? We'll leave it as datetime out. That's the default name. And it says select a format that matches the incoming string field. So if you're looking at transaction date, it's day, month, year, and your time. So which one has that here? Day, month, year, this one right here. And let's run. Cool. And now datetime out, they created a new column called datetime out, and it's the exact same data, but this is a datetime field. But let's check that by using a select. Let's run. And datetime out, you can see is a datetime. Now, I don't need this anymore. And now we'll use a formula tool. Just go to my favorites. We'll go to a formula tool to actually convert that datetime to a month. And we're going to create a new column, call that month. And then the formula we need to use is called, well, yes, the function. The function is called datetime format. And then we need to bring in 2 values. One is the field that we don't have to change. And that is called datetime underscore out. Yep. And then the format that we want is quote hashtag capital B. And that's going to be the month. If we had done lowercase m, it would tell us the number of the month. But since we want the actual name, we'll keep it as capital B. And let's run that. And now, as you can see, now we have a month column that tells us just the name of the month. All right, so at this point, we're getting a lot of columns. So I'm going to add a select tool to remove some of the columns that we don't need. And when working with data, preparing data, you always want to have as least data as you need, right? So there's a lot of columns in here that we don't need, and we've been accumulating them, but it's just the same as running a SQL query. You don't want to pull in all the data. You just want to pull in what you need. So in this case, we don't need, let's see, online or in person. We don't need to know that for this exercise. We don't need the transaction code because we already have bank 1 in here for us. We don't need the customer code as we are aggregating data. We don't need row level information. This bank 2 column with the rest of the digits, we don't need that. Transaction date, we don't need anymore. And I think that's it. And let's rename some of these. Bank 1, I'm just going to call that bank. Datetime out, I'm going to call this transaction date. I would love to call this month, but they want to call transaction date, so we'll leave it as that. Actually, I messed that up. We don't need datetime out. What we need is month. Copy that down here. Remove that. Oh, date. Transaction date. All right, so that keeps value, bank, and month. And I think that's all we need. Let's run it and see. All right, value, bank, transaction date. That makes sense to me. It looks like all we need. All right, so what is the next step? The next step is to total up your transaction value so you have 1 row for each bank and month combination. So if you're familiar with SQL, this is basically doing a group by month and bank. So for that, we're going to do a summarize, which you can find here at transform. We're going to bring that in. And here's what we decide which transformations we want to do and how we want to split it up. So we know we want a group by bank and a group by transaction date, which is our month. And then the value is, it's the value of each transaction. We want a sum of that. So, and you know what? I messed up here. So there's still a string, not an actual number. So let's go back to our select tool here. And we're going to change transaction from a string to a double. So it's actually a number. Let's run that again. And now we can see field type says double. And now we can add a sum by. And so here's our order. It's going to group by bank, group by transaction date, which is our month, and then it's going to give us a sum. And let's run that. Cool. So DS Bank, July, 55,002. And let's check the answers here to make sure that we are correct. Let's bring this in. We'll do August DS. The value should be 102,237. So August DS, 102,237. Cool. So that tells me we're on the right path. Cool. So that's another requirement done. So the next one, it says rank each bank for their value of transactions each month against the other banks. First is the highest value transactions and third the lowest. And this requires 2 steps. If you know a better way to do it, let me know. But the way I know how to do it is, one, we're going to sort this. First, we're going to sort this by transaction date, by month. And then we're going to sort this by the transaction, the sum value. That's going to be descending. So that way it's sorted by whoever has the most. And let's run that to make sure it worked. All right, so we've got April, DTB, 42,000, DS, 40,000, and DSB, 30,000. August, we got 102,000, 66,000, and 38,000. All right, that's working how we want it. Now, we're going to use what's called a multi-row formula tool. We're going to bring that in, and we're going to create a new field. We're going to call that rank. And then everything else, we're going to group by transaction date. And down here in expression, I'm going to paste this formula. I'll leave this down in the description. So multi-row formula is taken into account, and I can do a different video on multi-row formulas, but basically what it does, it's looking at if the value, so I sorted all the values, and then imagine there is a 0 value above here. This formula is going to look if the previous value equals the current value. So imagine there's a 0 here. If it doesn't equal that, it's going to add a 1 into the ranking. So imagine this is rank 0, there's going to be rank 1, and it's going to, now this next rank is going to look up here. Is this value equal to that value? If the answer is no, it's going to add another to the rank. Well, let's run that so you can see what I'm talking about. And let's click here. So here's our rank. And so imagine there's rank 0, right? So if rank 0, next row is some value, 80,000. Does that equal to 0? No. So add 1. Next one, 78,000. Does that equal 80,000? No. So adds 2. 36,000. Does that equal 78,000? No. Equals 3. And it's taking that into account the month, because we grouped that by transaction date over here, right? So that's why it's starting over each time. Anyways, I'll leave a link down to the description and more information about the multi-row formulas, or let me know if you want a video about it and we can talk more about it. All right, so that's our rank. That's pretty good. And that is the end of what I call the beginner part of this. Because everything here is basically just grouping by, some data cleaning and group bys. Now, we need to calculate the average transaction value per rank and the average rank per bank. And what's different there is that these values aren't recalculated, basically. So these values, if I can bring that up, are always the same. They're basically a static value. So if you look here, the average rank per bank for DTB is 1.75 every time. DTB over here, 1.75. For DSB, it's always 2.33, 2.33, and for DS is 1.91. Same with the average transaction value per rank. So look at this. For month of August, the S bank is the number 1 rank, and the average transaction value per rank is 66,000. Here in March, DTB is number 1, and the average transaction value per rank is still 66,000, right? Same with number 2. 48,000, number 2, 48,000. So it doesn't matter which bank it is, so we're no longer grouping by. So it's almost like a window function, really. Anyways, we need to do a couple of things. We need to calculate the average rank per bank, and then the average transaction value per rank. And to do that, we're going to use the summarize tool again, and I'm going to bring that in here. And I'm going to go here into the annotation, just to remind myself what we're calculating here, and it's the average rank per bank. And usually that's good practice to always label what you're doing. For this, pretty simple, so I'm not going to do it for every time, but it's good practice to do so in case somebody else needs to look at your work. Anyway, so that's the average rank per bank. And what are we actually going to do here? So all we need to do is basically a group by. We're going to add group bank. I'm going to group by down here. And then in rank, I'm going to add the average. So go to numeric, I'm going to add average and hit run. And now here's our average rank. Oh, Now, if I click here, you can see the average rank per bank. So if you look at that, DSB is 2.3, DS is 1.91, and DTB is 1.75. And if you look at the answers, that is what we're seeing. So that's the easy one. But here's where it gets tricky. Instead of doing, so now if we look here, the end of my data is here. The end of my data is here. So what do I need to do? I'm going to move this down here just so it's easier to understand. But we're basically going to look at this other step and make another calculation off of this step, not this one. So again, I'm going to have my summarize tool, and I'm going to connect it to this previous step instead of this one. So this is going to be our average transaction value per rank. And a reminder, this is basically, if you're ranked number 1, what's the average value you usually have? If you're ranked number 2, what's the average value? And if you're number 3, what's the average value? It has nothing to do with the month or the bank or anything like that. So what are we going to do here? So let's go here. And the first thing is we're going to group by the rank, which is different. And what we're going to do is an average of the sum value. We're going to call this average transaction value per rank. And let's hit run, see if that worked. Cool, so rank number 1 is 66,967.75, rank number 2 is 48,000, and rank number 3 is 34,000. And if you want to check my work, we're looking at these numbers. So 1 is 66,000, 2 is 48, and 3 is 34,000. And that's what we see here as well. And let's see, average transaction value per bank. And here, I think I forgot. Yeah, I did not rename this. Let's go average rank per bank. All right, so let's run all of this. We're almost done. So what you want to do here is you want to think of this, this, and this as 3 different tables. And so what do we do when we have different tables and we just want to tack on columns? We're going to have to do a join because we want all these 3 columns to end up looking like this. And basically everything up to the multi-row gives us these values, and the last 2 summarize give us this one, and this other one. So let's go back to Alteryx, and what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 different joins. Go to my favorites, and here's one join. I'm going to drag and drop the multi-row, the results of the multi-row formula. To remind you, it's these. I'm going to join that to the results of the average rank per bank. That's going to be my right side of my join column. And I'm going to hit run. Oh, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to click that, and I have to tell it, how do you want it to join? So on my left table, it's bank, and on my right side is bank. These are the fields that they have in common. So bank names and bank names here. That's how it can know to join them, right? And here you can decide which fields to bring in. I don't want the bank from the right side because we already have the bank name over here. I just want to bring in the average rank per bank. Well, let's run that. And what's cool about this join tool in Alteryx, it shows you the results of a left join, a right join, and an inner join. And here, let's see. So we've got DSB bank, and our average rank per bank is 2.3. And that is what I'm seeing on my left screen here. For DS bank is 1.91, and that is correct as well. And DTB bank is 1.75. So all that is correct. This is our average rank per bank. So now we need to bring in the average transaction value per rank. So I'm going to add another join tool. My left side is going to be the result of the inner join of these 2 tables. And my right side is going to be the results of this table, right? And what joins them? It's the rank column. So rank on this column, on this table, equals rank on this table. And again, I don't want to bring in the rank. I just want to bring in the average transaction value per rank. And let's hit run, and let's see what happens. Hit our inner join. And the first thing I look at is 36 records, which is what we're told we're going to have. And now here we have our 6 columns. We have bank, transaction date, sum value, rank, average rank per bank, and average transaction value per rank. So let's look here. Rank number 2 has 48,000. And if we look over here, bank number 2, 48,000. Let's go back. Rank number 1, 66,967.75, 66,967.75. So that tells me we have the right answer. And now we're almost done. Now I just want to order everything in the same order that they asked us to do it in. So I'm going to bring in this select tool. And let's see, our first column should be the transaction date, then the bank name, then value. I call that some value, but they just want it as value. Then here is the bank rank per month. Oop, let me fix that there. Make this bigger so you can see it. And then average rank per bank should be down here, and it should be average transaction value per rank and average rank per bank. Oh, and I still spelled this wrong. Month. There we go. Why is there a J? Okay, there we go. Cool. And let's go back here. Let's hit run. We have 36 records, 6 columns. And just to confirm we have the right answer, let's pick some random dates. Let's see, March DTB. Let's go through here, March. And let's sort this so I can see everything. Let's sort. And this sort that I'm doing is only on this view. It doesn't actually sort your data. But here's April, August. Okay, August. DS is 102,000 value, rank 1. And this should be 66,967. And my average rank is 1.91. And that's our first row of data up here. Let's pick this random one. March DS. Let's go here, March DS, 36,799, rank is number 3. Average transaction value per rank is 34,000, and average rank per bank is 1.91. So that tells me all our data is correct, and all we have to do is add an output to output this data. And I'm going to output a CSV file. Where did you go? CSV. And I'm just going to save it to my desktop. And I'm going to call this Preppin 2023. Oh, messed that up. Preppin 2023, week 5. And let's hit run. And here's our final output. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below, and follow me for more data content.